Operations with fractions. So we've already spent a lot of time going over adding and subtracting fractions. Really the main idea is if you go through the procedures of finding the common denominator, when do you do it? Whenever you're adding or subtracting fractions with unlike denominators. Why? Because whenever you have parts and you have a different number total in the whole, like for example, one of these has 2, one of these has 4. So this is 1/2 plus a fourth. For us to be able to accurately put these together, we need to have the same amount of parts in each one of the wholes. So now we have 2/4, an equivalent fraction, with 1/4. We can add and subtract those now. And we just went over the how. So this is a little template set up to where these are the steps you should be following. I'm going to just go ahead and make up a fraction to add or subtract. So our denominators are 2 and 4, 2, 4, 4. And you see that our common denominator is going to be 4. This is typically where you've been making a mistake. So you're counting by 2s. How many 2s did you count? 2. Whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. And what do we count by 4s? Well, we only did 1, so that's going to stay the same. We know our common denominator is going to be 4. Now all we have to do is just solve the numerators. 2 times 1 is 2, and 3 times 1 is 3. This is another mistake that is very common. Carry that addition sign over. Always remind yourself you're doing an addition problem. You're doing an addition problem. 2 plus 3 equals 5, and keep the denominator 4. 5/4. 4 goes into 5 one time, with 1 left over. 4 is the denominator. The only difference with subtraction is that you would subtract the numerators instead of adding them at the end. The multiplying and dividing algorithms, I'm going to use the same problem and then go through the routine. So 1/2 and 2/4. 1/2 and 2/4. So multiplication is incredibly straightforward. If you see that multiplication symbol in between two fractions, you just go straight across the top, straight across the bottom. 2/8. We have a fraction here. We need to figure out if we can simplify it. If we don't want to think, which I'm always all for not thinking, 2 and 8, all you have to do is use a multiplication chart and find 2 and 8. Let's see, 2 and 8. 2 and 8. You don't want it to be in the 1 because it's just going to be itself again. It's going to end up being a 1/4. So when we simplify that, we got 1/4. Easy. Now for the difference between multiplying and dividing. Keep it, change it to multiplication, and you're going to be multiplying by the reciprocal, which means the upside down version of the second fraction. Keep the first one, change it to multiplication, flip the second one upside down. Across the top, across the bottom. 4/4. Okay, so 4 divided by 4 equals 1. And when we look back at this problem, okay, so this can simplify into 1/2. How many times does 1/2 fit into 1/2? One time. So in addition to this, I would like you to just practice adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing fractions. Add, subtract, multiply, divide, over and over and over and over. Don't skip steps. Make sure you are including this as well as showing what you're multiplying each fraction by, then rewriting. This is when you make mistakes, this is when you're not rewriting.